we've all had conversations about the Pac-12 / Pac-10, maybe, depending on what else is realigned here, especially with Ryan. And I know where Ryan stands, but certainly I want to hear from you too, Ryan, even though we've had lengthy conversations about, certain fan bases are more aligned and more supportive and proud to be in a particular conference, and some fan bases are less attached to that conference. What's a best case scenario? Is it joining the Big Ten or staying in a stabilized plus whatever that means, San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, some configuration of that? So a stabilized Pac-12 or off to the Big Ten or otherwise?
Well, I think I look at it in a couple different ways. I think if I had, from like an emotional perspective, I'd love to see the Pac-12 still around. I've covered this conference. I grew up rooting for Oregon in this conference and following this conference for 30 years, right? So I mean, there's emotional attachments to it where it's like, I'd love to see this conference exist. But what I will also say is there's an uncertainty about whether this conference is going to remain viable to compete for national championships, right? And the conference is already struggling right now. Don't put it past whatever the future of the college football playoff is to basically start excluding some of these conferences almost outright. Like that's something that's been talked about. And if there's a conference that we know will be included in it, it's the Big Ten and it's the SEC. And so if Oregon can be in the Big Ten, to me, that removes all the uncertainty about continuing to compete for national championships, which is the goal here and has been the goal here for about over a decade. So, mark me down as like in my, maybe my heart's telling me, gosh, it'd be fun to stay in the Pac-12 and play against the Oregon State and play against Washington State and play against all these teams. But I think in my mind, I'm pretty aware of the fact that there's a chance you end up being kind of hosed if you stay in the Pac-12 in about 5-6 years here.
Yeah, stability. How stable are you if every team's making 20 something million and everybody else in the country is making 100 million? The minute another conference wants one of those teams, they're gone. So I think the stability is a very loose word to use for what that Pac-12 would be. Yeah, 10 or 8 of the teams stayed, but the minute Washington, Oregon, or Stanford got an invite, they wouldn't be staying. They'd be gone. If they stayed, it's because they got told no.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the Pac-12 as well, but if it's falling around, I don't want to be the band on the Titanic over here. So I mean, we got to get to the next level.
Oregon, Stanford, or Washington just playing the music.
Let's get this right, boys.
So I'm guessing, like Eric alluded to, you'd all have mixed feelings about, when you grow up being a fan of a particular team and you're used to playing, in this case, Washington. I know that is I don't think people across the country understand, and I've had all of you comment on it, but I don't think they understand. Shoot, Mike's got a podcast, Ducks and Dogs podcast, so they fight. That this is a better hated rival in Washington, and they in some scenarios be going with Oregon, so that could stay intact, but in other scenarios maybe not. Washington State, we could go down the coast, Cal and Stanford, of course, everyone in the division, and beyond that, USC's been a great rival in the other division and so forth. So I got to think that there would be mixed feelings but there would be like these fresh, exciting new games against Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, fill in the blank across the Big Ten. That would be interesting to see. Michigan come to Autzen Stadium for the first time since they got waxed about 15 years ago. Michigan State coming out like they did 5-6 years ago in that home and home series. Of course, the Ohio State series. All those games would be just fresh.
Yeah, and
I pose a question to Ryan. Sorry, because Ryan, I know you go to a lot of these games. If these games are regional for you though, and travel is pretty reasonable. Have you thought about what it would be like to have to fly to like Rutgers and fly to Baltimore and all this stuff? Like, I think that part for the average fan or for fans who want to go follow this team, like, I think that gets overlooked a little bit. That would be tough on you guys, right?
I agree. I mean, I think it would be fun to go see some of those venues because as a Pac-12 guy, you don't get to see the whiteout and Happy Valley or whatever. But I don't know. I'm with you. I feel bad for the Bees, man. I mean, I feel bad for these teams that feel like they're left behind, and It's a rough one, but I gotta jump here a little bit. I got a live stream starting at 11, so I gotta jump in a little bit. But yeah, no, it's a tough situation for everybody, and I just don't think it's right that you got these decisions being made by corporate executives. Man, it's like let the academics take over or whatever the case may be. But holy
Academically
smokes,
prowess.
Fox making the decisions now. Oh no.
Yeah, it may be a little ignorant, but as a younger fan, as long as we're still playing USC and Washington, I could care less about the Pac-12.
Yeah, sure. I would hate to go without Washington or some sort of Northwest representative.
Yeah, I would want to still play Washington, and as long as USC's already there, if we can get Washington with us, all the games that I remember are Stanford. Don't want to keep playing those. No thanks, I'm good. Don't need to keep doing those. Don't need to do that to myself. But Washington, USC, that's all I need.